This week's episode is brought to you by ice blocks. We help build ice walls, really tall towers. Nothing can beat these. They are impenetrable as long as you are in warm climates and are not near any fire. These are going to be some really strong walls that we make. Ice walls. Get them wherever ice is sold.
What is this podcast called again?
I've got nothing.
Who came up with that?
Definitely your wife.
Ah, shit.
Game of Thrones, the series that ignited a nation, is discussed weekly by two nerds. One, seen every episode completely immersed. The other knows nothing about the phenomenon. Each week, they discuss, debate about what they know and what one doesn't know. This is I've Got Nothing.
Welcome to I Got Nothing, the most unnecessary format for a podcast since Lost was on the air. I'm Colin.
I'm Alex.
And this week we are talking about the finale of the 7th season of Game of Thrones, The Dragon and the Wolf. I've seen every episode of Game of Thrones and I've read all the books.
I've seen one season.
I gotta let you drive this one because my thoughts are pretty scattered. You hop into
I kind of what I say is we start with that big meeting between everyone and then we kind of jump around
forever,
right?
And I guess it's like, and you didn't really get a sense of this because I talked to you about this at the start of the season, but generally in the past when there was a bigger roster of characters to follow, you would start the season, you'd kind of have some big moments there, and then every episode would be one scene per person because people were so scattered, and so there would be one story that was the main story and that would get 2 or 3 scenes in the episode, and then everyone else would get one scene that kind of pushed them through to the end of the season. But we've consolidated so much now that you don't really do that, so the end result is you get these long trotting scenes that feel like they go on forever, and I feel like this was one. For what the end result was, it felt like a huge chunk of time in the longest episode in the show's history.
That was very long. I don't know. I felt, as someone who doesn't know the history, I kind of didn't care about the other bits that were happening, like by any stretch of the imagination.
Other bits being like the Arya Sansa stuff, like you just
like inside of the meeting, like the other side characters having their own spats.
Well, the show didn't really address it in the way that you expected. Like, you thought that with, what did we have? Probably 10 major characters come into this thing, and there's a lot of subtext between these people. It's a web of relationships, but only the obvious stuff is really being addressed. Like, there's really nothing between Jaime and Jon. There's not that much between Tyrion and Jaime. There's not that much between Sir Davos and it's all over the place kind of, and you have characters walk off like, what happened to Bronn and Pod? Like, I know, like, they left, which kind of was an implication of like, oh, Bronn's being the good guy. I'd be like, hey, if the shit hits the fan, like, I'm gonna get you safe, Pod, because you're one of the few innocent people in this world. But it didn't, and I don't know, it just, the Hound had his moment with the zombie, and you thought that was going to go somewhere, and we know that it will in the future, but that's all the season has really been, is like, oh, that'll mean something later.
So, I mean, again, I think you're kind of leaning towards that Harry Potter Part 1, Deathly Hallows Part 1.
100%. This is the final season Part 1.
Yeah.
Whenever we get to the final season of the show, it's just going to be Part 2 of what this season was. Yeah. So we'll probably be more appreciative of it then, but it's frustrating considering what the last few finales of the show has been in terms of being a fallout to kind of a major event episode and several major shifts of the board to set up for the next season. This, I mean, there's some major stuff that happens in this episode, but we're still generally in sort of the same holding pattern that we've been for weeks now. We have the Targaryens and the Starks going to the north, and we have the Lannisters that are kind of making their own powwow in the south. They're still at war. Nothing was resolved there. The Night King is getting ever closer. The dragon from last week being probably one of the biggest things here.
I'm happy that we saw him immediately. The dragon, and we'll circle back on that later, but I'm really happy that we actually immediately saw that.
I feel like we had to.
Yeah. Well, I was afraid that it was just kind of going to be at bay until next season, and that we kind of just ended at that point.
No, I mean, I didn't maybe haven't expressed it, but you knew the final shot of this episode was going to be in some form or fashion the army of the dead marching south.
Yeah, no.
Just to remind you of what's coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't think they would get past the wall like that, but it checked out.
Yeah.
But other than that whole debate going through it, I got what I wanted, I guess. But it was a lot of drama.
A lot of good drama. Like I would probably say that the two scenes with Cersei are the highlight of the episode. Mm-hmm. Tyrion and Cersei, great dramatic scene.
Yeah,
I think doesn't go like. You could honestly believe this is the end of Tyrion. Tyrion sacrifices himself for the cause.
That's what I want to know.
Cersei gets her revenge against him and in return offers her armies. We didn't get that because this show has always been great about diverting you towards one thing and then giving you another.
Yeah.
And we got a fun scene where after years and years of it being the opposite, Cersei outplays Tyrion in a way. But still, like him unloading his pain about what has happened to his family was, that's Peter Dinklage's third Emmy, for all we know. And her scene with Jaime, equally good. It's them both kind of being right from their own perspectives. It's hard to pick a side in that. I mean, as much as you want to hate Cersei, it's hard not to side with her in this episode. She has no reason to side with these people. They don't offer her anything in return other than the genuine promise that, like, hey, you're going to help us all not be dead. But she's the most self-centered of the characters. She needs more than that to lay down her arms with these people for whom every conflict is a personal one.
Well, that's what I'm confused about, because I kind of felt like we resolved that with whatever happened between her and Peter. That she was getting something back. But now it seems like with whatever did happen between that meeting that we don't know about, there's no truth to that.
It was. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say it was something along the lines of Tyrion knowing that no matter what happens in this conflict, Cersei loses. Either she dies from the army of the dead, or she dies from the Targaryen army. In which case, he would be the new head of House Lannister. Mm-hmm. So his promise could be something along the lines of, your child will be safe, I will raise it as the heir to this house, and what you want, which is the protection of your family, will go on.
Yeah.
Obviously not that important because it doesn't matter. She doesn't stick with it, which I'm not surprised either. Like, her swearing her allegiance to that pact was very out of character for her, and I'm glad that we didn't waste any time in revealing, no, she didn't.
She doesn't care.
But it raises two really kind of logical questions. Number one, she let Jaime go. Like, you thought that this would finally be, like, because her and Jaime have been on a path towards each other for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. You know that one of them is going to kill the other. That's the only way that this ends up.
What happened?
She lets him go, so presumably the next time we see Jaime, he will be in the north fighting with Jon and Daenerys and the rest of that team, and so they will know not to count on her.
Yeah. So
her big play doesn't even matter because there's never going to be a point where they're expecting the Southern Army to come support them. They'll know from Jaime that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that means that they went north past the wall, fought the White Walkers, lost a dragon, which in turn allows the army of the dead to come south past the wall, and in return, all they got was Jaime Lannister fighting on their side. They didn't convince Cersei, they didn't get the Southern Army, they didn't cause a truce. So that entire detour last episode was for nothing. And I'm not so mad about that because the show has always kind of been about great efforts that end up being futile, but still, I mean, we go back to our discussion last week about, like, the Night King was right there and the dragons were right there, and if they had just kept burning for a little while longer, they might have ended the entire fight.
Yeah.
But now, just, I don't know, you can see the mechanics that the writers had to go through to get to where we are. They had to find a way to get the dragon up there, get it killed, get it turned, and then for that sake, get it back through the wall. It just seems like, for a show that's won as many Emmys as this one, they could have found a more engaging way. I feel like we more and more are losing the inner character drama that drives this series. It's not just, fun Dungeons, like it's not just Dungeons and Dragons of just like cool effect stuff. It's flawed characters acting in their own self-interest or doing what they believe to be right and often failing because of it. Well,
that brings me to what I was about to mention of some of my favorite scenes of this season have just been either those any type of those town hall settings or any type of these type of meetups.
Well, I mean, that's the sell of this season, because this was the season where characters that have never been in rooms together got to come interact with another, and that's what you want to see as a fan.
Well, even as I didn't know them, I think they put those well enough to where you do, like, I think what you mentioned earlier, to where you understand everyone's side and there's not necessarily a wrong or right. People are just acting out of character interest, and I don't think I've seen another show work in a way of as a group setting like that, of just working it out. I mean, although John was a fucking idiot, but
as usual,
he got laid. So
and like him, and I mean, at least Daenerys didn't make any serious like tactical errors in this one, but John has truly kind of hit the point where it's like the show is keeping him alive.
Yeah.
He's too important to the show to die, but he keeps making the decisions of someone that, if they were another character on the show, they would have died a long time ago.
I'm curious to now go back and watch and see what other stupid decisions he's made, because
there have been many.
That was a bad move.
So, I mean, I'm of the opinion now that the reason for Cersei to continue being where she is that some way, somehow, the King's Landing is going to be taken by the Night King.
I mean,
she and all of her people are going zombie. Like, I don't know. I can see a world where the final season is really this big battle where you have them consolidated at Winterfell, and you have the army of the dead coming from the north, and you have the Southern Army attacking from the south, because she said that's what they're going to do. They're going to reconsolidate, recapture all their fortresses. But I don't know. It seems not tense enough unless all of that force doesn't eventually succumb to the real enemy, which is the army of the dead.
Yeah. Again, I think I said this at the very beginning of the season, which is I don't understand, even now that she's faced a real life situation, to not, now that Cersei, is worried about her kingdom and what's going to be happening in the South Side. But I mean, at a certain point,
her mistake as a character has always been,
it's not strategic. Like, it's not.
But she's spending the money that she got from Highgarden to hire a mercenary army. So presumably you're going to have this massive force in the south that's untouched by everything going on in the north. But in the 6 episodes they'll make up the final season, you wonder how long can that last before the show eventually has to find something to do with it just to get them out of the way.
Yeah, I don't think it's pragmatic. Like, just as a I disagree with the idea that she's this cold, cool-blooded, really strategic. I think it's a dumb idea. Well,
I mean, that's been her character, is that her hubris is always her downfall. She sees herself as untouchable, even now after everything she's gone through. She does seem more in this episode to know that her death will either come at the hands of the army of the dead or at the hands of the Targaryens, so she won't give them the satisfaction of fighting with them. She will fight until her dying breath, which makes sense for her, but losing Jaime, she now has no one, really. Yeah. She's lost everyone in her council except for Qyburn, who's not really going to be that much useful to her for much longer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see where she goes, because I'm surprised that faction lived the season. I'm happy about it because we've been killing off so many characters that the morality and the different sides to this war has slowly been chiseled down as more and more characters have been killed off, to where we are hitting a point of very, very firmly black and white. Losing Littlefinger...
100%.
Yeah, and he's not been very useful for a little while, but still, he was a level of complication that kept the show interesting.
Actually, let's move on to Littlefinger.
That is that's what bugs me, is that's probably the most interesting stuff in this episode, and it's all that happened off screen, and it's what the show used to be really, really good at, which was leading you to believe one thing was happening, but sowing the seeds of character enough to where when what actually ends up happening happens, you feel, oh, you know, that makes sense because of what I know about these people. It's not what I expected.
Yeah.
That being said, we called this.
Yeah, no.
Why? Like, it was pretty obvious.
I think we said, was it?
We were going to be led to believe that Littlefinger was pulling the strings, and at the end, Arya and Sansa were going to turn it on him, and he was going to bite it. So, and that's a bummer because you want to be surprised by the show.
As someone who doesn't know much about these characters, that seemed like, I don't know. I kind of felt that at the very start of that. Even once that scene started, I think it was you or me who said those like this will not happen the way we think, the way it's showing up to happen.
No, like Sansa. They have done too good of a job of developing Sansa from who she is in the start of the show, which is a very naive, fantasy-driven, girly wannabe princess, to a hardened, reclusive, very close to the chest, like tactician.
Yeah.
That it was never really that believable that she would turn on Arya like that.
Yeah. I would never get...
Fairly entertaining to watch, yeah, but it took, for how little time there was in the season compared to past seasons, it took up a lot of our time.
It did. Just to kill him, which is something that everyone seemed they already wanted to do.
And I think that's part of the problem of the season, is that there's not enough characters left to sustain the amount of time they need for these episodes. And, you know, if they had kept them at normal 60-minute episodes, maybe we wouldn't have this problem. But the last 2 episodes have been 80 minutes a pop.
That's almost a whole other episode.
Yeah, it's like, it's really, the last 2 episodes make 4 episodes. And it's just sort of either bring in some new characters or find ways to engage us further than you have.
Well, 2 bits. How you just described Sansa, I'm curious to see that because I would never have gotten whimsical or fantasy from her by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, by the time you meet her, she's been through she's had probably the worst of it. Of any character in the show, she has been through the worst, and she has come out on top. And there's a reason why she's probably the most likely to live out this show, is that she's seen the worst of anyone else.
Yeah.
And she knows she's learned over the course of this series how to get what she wants through indirect ways. She's very different from Jon or Daenerys or Arya, who are deadly, but not always the smartest.
Yeah.
And so, I think she's a great person to have in charge in the North. But did her arc this season really have to just be building to, like, we could have killed Littlefinger a couple of episodes ago and then given her something new to do. From
the very start of it, I don't know why Littlefinger was alive. The only thing I know of Littlefinger from the start, or Small Hands, as I like to call him, was that he can't be trusted and he should die.
He should die.
Like, I think one of them said that he should die at the very start.
And you would think that what the show would do was set up a scenario in which Jon and Daenerys come back to Winterfell, and Sansa has lost faith in Jon and sort of wrestled control away from him because she no longer has faith in him to do what needs to be done because he went off south and didn't contact her.
Yeah. But do you think that they couldn't have killed Littlefinger off because of the fact is they physically needed that evidence and that proof and that these past episodes were just kind of building towards that?
They did, but they took so long to build towards it because they clearly didn't really have in mind anything to do with these characters after Littlefinger's death, so they just made that the big finale storyline. Yeah. They could have done it sooner, and they could have engaged us with those characters in other ways, I think.
Agreed.
There could have been more going on with them and then with Tormund and Beric Dondarrion at Eastwatch, who I hope both of them are alive. Like, we don't know for sure. It seems that they're dead because we cut from them to this massive shot of the wall crumbling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this season has proven that we can probably expect the next episode of the show, whenever it comes back in a year or so. Yeah. We'll see them come out of the water, they survived the fall, and they're going to be the ones who ride south to warn them, like, hey, they've broken through the wall, they're coming.
Well, can't Bran just tell them? Speaking of Bran, he was useful.
He was useful.
So
let's get to the big Jon Snow reveal before we do anything else. Did you have a sense of that going into it?
Yeah, because I think they mentioned it in the last episode of the episode before that. They
didn't mention Jon Snow specifically. They just mentioned Rhaegar Targaryen and his annulment.
I can't remember how. Maybe someone who we're watching it with mentioned it, but
probably,
which gave it away. But yeah, I knew walking into this that I thought they were cousins. Turns out she's his aunt.
She's his aunt.
But yeah, I knew that.
So you understand now what we were freaking out about 3 weeks ago when they revealed that thing about the annulment.
Yeah, the annulment and that other stuff. That made sense. And I don't know. I get it. It was weird about seeing aunts hook up with boys.
But the show's kind of made incest pretty cool.
Standard, right?
Pretty standard. Like, it's not that weird of a thing anymore in the show.
I know. You can't... I mean, you don't ship it, but I wasn't completely... I was like, yeah, that kind of seems like their cultural thing,
And I think
guess.
that's what makes... The biggest promise of the next season, and why I'm surprised Cersei's alive, is that at some point, Jon and Daenerys are going to become at odds, because Jon is technically the heir to the throne, but Daenerys is the conqueror. Daenerys is the one with the dragons.
Do you think Jon gives a shit about being the heir to the throne?
I don't think so, but the question is, like, what will the people think? And, you know, I don't think this show will do something as simple as, like, oh, well, they are both rulers, so she'll rule in the south and he'll rule in the north. And, you know, on one hand, he's already bent the knee to her, but on the other hand, technically the bloodline declares him to be the real king, so...
I just like Jon doesn't give a shit about technicalities. And just be like...
But no, but he does, because he's been a bastard his whole life.
Yeah.
And to learn that he isn't, that he's actually a true-born son, that he doesn't deserve, that he never deserved any of the treatment he had as a bastard, I think that is really going to rock him.
Speaking of which, I don't understand why he needed to be a bastard. Am I missing something? Because if he's born of both royalty...
But they didn't know.
The parents didn't?
No. Okay, so what... Recite to me what you think you know from the conversation with Bran and Sam.
Yeah, that they were... I didn't get the bit that they didn't know that they were both royalty. Like, it seemed like they both were... That it was...
No, he's royalty because he's king in the north.
But he's a Targaryen.
But no one knows he's a Targaryen.
But wouldn't his parents know that they were Targaryen?
Who are his parents?
I am forgetting right now.
Are they alive?
No.
Yeah, but Bran said no one knows, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody knows.
So literally, and so the only...
Who does Jon think his father is?
I already forgot.
Okay. Who does Jon think his family is? Like, who are his brothers and sisters?
The Starks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just... I guess I'm blanking.
Drink your scotch.
Yeah.
This is getting boring.
It is. I'm blanking on a lot of stuff here. I guess I don't know why he's not instantly royalty. Did they die instantly?
I mean, I can't tell you that. I'm not going to fill you in on backstory.
Fuck off. Sorry. This is why our podcast is explicit. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But yeah, so I want to learn more about that for the next season. But
you understand that...
I totally get it.
You understand who he is now.
I totally understand that I totally get that. But I don't see it getting to the point where he's going to be like, well, technically... and he'll be like, yeah, it does suck,
because
and there will be that.
Because he doesn't know that he's a Targaryen.
No, like when he does, I still think it's I think he's a chill dude, and I think like if I'm okay with the storyline of just being if end all be all Danny's be like, I got the South, you got the North. It's kind of weird that we're related, but obviously that was chill earlier. So let's find commonality, because they both want common goals. They both have general interests.
Which is why I'm kind of the curiosity of it is that they've been written to be so compatible as rulers and as fighters. Is that you would think that the writing would make them a bit more like, oh, this reveal will actually drive a wedge between them. Yeah. But beyond the awkwardness of it,
I don't see it.
There doesn't seem to be that much for them to be like, oh, well, okay, like our goals and wants don't really change.
Not one bit. That's kind of what I'm going towards is I don't think that they care. Whenever it is revealed, I think there will be a little bit of... I think it honestly affects Danny more than it affects Jon, other than the fact of him being a bastard and be like, I wasn't a bastard, I didn't deserve this. I think, to your point, that's correct, but... I think really only Danny's going to struggle with that. Well, you're rightful heir, and I think he's just like, I really do find him as just a cool dude.
And again, it's going to depend on who knows.
Yeah.
Because like if Jon and Danny find out but don't tell anyone, it doesn't affect anything.
Exactly.
It just affects them.
Unless Sansa knows. I don't even think.
But Bran doesn't tell anyone anything.
Which makes him useless.
Bran could have told Sansa weeks ago, and he didn't.
Bran could have showed up and be like, you should probably kill Littlefinger.
I don't see any way Bran lives out this series. Like, he's too all powerful and useless that like he's gonna get knocked off by like a White Walker or something just to get him out of the way because he's too much of a threat.
He's kind of a headache, and I don't see. I see 4 people living at the end of this, and that's Stark, the Arya, Sansa, Jon, and Dany.
Yeah.
And that's it. Maybe some other side characters that maybe the Hound's just always chilling. He seems like a cool dude that he survives anything.
I dig him.
I see Jaime and Cersei going down a really rough path.
Jaime and Cersei aren't living this one out.
Yeah.
I honestly now that it's out in the open that both Daenerys and Jon are Targaryens, like one of them dying seems pretty evident.
They're breaking up, so this is...
Your favorite character, Jorah, did not have any lines in this entire episode.
I know, little upset sis. I miss him. I miss him the whole time.
I know.
And then there was some small character stuff.
Which becomes less and less fun because you wonder, is this just kind of giving some lip service to what the fans want to see, or does it actually lead to anything?
As someone who doesn't know anything, it doesn't feel like I do not care about this. I'm sorry, I don't. There's one main point, and there's. I know that since I know there's a final season, I know how many episodes are left. I know that we need to get this out of the way, and let's just get it out. Like if you ignore it, I'm okay with that.
It's like I keep expecting big fights where a bunch of the characters are involved, and we had that earlier in the season when Daenerys attacked the convoy, and that was awesome. But it didn't really yield that many stakes. And then we had it again last week where we lost a dragon, but we didn't lose any of the character. This whole season has been weird to me because generally what has kept the drama tight is that we get attached to these characters and then they unexpectedly die in ways that make brutal sense for the plotting. And that constantly reminds you that this is a world of really real life and death. And yet this season, for some reason, set that aside to do a whole lot of setup for this big war with the Night King.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm just kind of leaning on it being part 1, and
not
just
even
kind of
part
holding
one,
off that.
a prologue. I'm surprised that we didn't have a big battle with the White Walkers, an army battle with the White Walkers.
I wanted to talk about that because I think I've mentioned this earlier. Of all of the promo for all of this season has just been the Night King's eye. And I really thought that was going to play a much larger effort.
Magnificent Seven in Snow just doesn't hold up to some of the bigger battles that we've seen in this season. And
I would have no idea.
I don't know. It would have seemed like one of the 2 main conflicts would have come to more of a head. A big fight that just wiped out a ton of characters. But
Jon got Dragonglass. So.
I don't have 3 Emmys for best drama writing, so what do I know?
Clearly. And I mean, again, I think what I'm hoping for is this all just seems like a lot of setup for something that, and it is a weird time to get in the middle of it because you're just being introduced to not a lot of things happening, but a lot of things building
up.
And I had this conversation with a friend yesterday I said, I don't feel like for my first time watching this that much has happened. She goes, so much has happened. And I go back, and now I'm going back and forth on that because what I see is at the end of the series now, what has happened is the White Walkers are past the wall. Sansa, all the Starks are reunited. I didn't know they were apart. And then we now have an army to go fight the White Walkers. But I can't put anything on Cersei, or anything of what they happen. And also, now that I'm thinking about it, what the whole debts being repaid thing, that wasn't ever revisited. I need more about that. I think there's some weird little bits that are still open.
Yeah, and it's just what are they, this whole Theon going to go rescue his sister, is that really going to be something that's worth our time while there's a war for all humanity going on in the north?
No. I mean, does his sister have a large army or something?
No, they lost their army. Euron has the bigger army now, on the fleet, and he apparently is going to go pick up the Golden Company, which, I guess could be interesting, but I don't know. It's the time for that kind of stuff seems to have passed because we have this massive thing happening up in the north.
Yeah, which again, I really want to watch more of that. I thought there was going to be more of that. But I mean, like I said, some of my favorite scenes were just those kind of those town hall settings and working through it. So I'm interested to see what more of that looks like. And then whenever we do get this next season, my hope is that what you're usually expecting is just magnified.
Yeah.
Towards a much larger degree, and very, very important people are going to die because of it. But again, I don't think it'll be in the way that surprises you or is. I mean, war is war at this point.
The next season is probably just going to feel like a 6-part movie. So
yeah.
They're going to kick it off crazy. Something horrible will happen.
Yeah. Yep. Other than that, I think.
Other than that, like for as long, like last week, for as long as an episode that this was, you can sum it up pretty quickly. There's not a lot to really dive into here.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, they
hit on the John. Like, this is the third time that the show has kind of revealed John's parentage. It's the most obvious time that they reveal who he is, but they revealed this a while ago.
I appreciated that very much, explaining it to me very clearly.
Yeah, like that scene almost seemed tailor-made for you, someone who hasn't been watching the show up to this point.
Thank you, writers. I mean, I will say, side bit is I had this argument.
I guess I don't know. I'm curious about like your experience on that, because that reveal has kind of been a rite of passage for fans of this series. It's a thing of if you read the books and you watch the show, I find you kind of hit a point of like obsession with it where you start to think about that and you come to the realization of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense and would be a big deal. And so it's far from a secret. And there's even this dumb anecdote where George R. R. Martin talks about how when David Benioff and D.B. Weiss first took him out to lunch to pitch him the idea of buying his series to adapt, he tested them by asking who Jon Snow's mother was. He wanted to see if they were big enough fans and like good enough at understanding the world to get that. And they answered it, and they acted like that was some like, oh, we're smarter than everybody because we figured it out. But it's not the case. Like,
general.
If you spend enough time in this world and you start to think about that sort of stuff, it really kind of comes out.
Yeah, then.
And it's exciting to finally confirm it. It really is, as you know, people that the first book came out in 1996, so like it's
been a while,
a long time coming.
21 years.
But I'm curious as to like your experience with that reveal, and I think it kind of got spoiled for you by people we were watching it with, but
no, they're still good people.
Yeah.
I mean, it leaned into that. I already knew ahead of time they were related. I don't think you can get away from the magnitude of it because you clearly them blatantly spelling it out for you, meaning that he is like essentially the chosen one. Like, there's no other way to sit. This is their version of the chosen one.
And, like, it makes you wonder does Daenerys bite it in the next season so that Jon can kind of ascend to that final position of the true ruler of the whole kingdom, you know?
Yeah. I don't know why. I've really sold myself on Dany just ruling things. Like, I like it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, if he is, like... That does make I can see that making that interesting, but I will say I don't think that importance of that scene can be stressed enough from someone who they spelled it out for me. They made it very clear and obvious. But at a certain point, I think you probably have to.
Yeah.
You can't just let some very important thing be low key forever.
But like going into next season, we have the Hound and his brother need to resolve that shit. We have Arya, who doesn't really have that much stake in the actual battle with the White Walkers. She wants to kill Cersei. Like that's all she wants to do. So is she? And I at first thought that okay, so is Cersei going to go north with his army so that Arya can kill her? But Arya, it seems like, is going to go south. So I would not be surprised to see her team back up with the Hound to just wreak all sorts of havoc.
What if she does kill Cersei?
No, I think she's going to.
I want that to happen.
I think that Arya and the Hound are stuck in King's Landing as it's being attacked by White Walkers, and she kills Cersei.
I want that to happen.
And they get kind of stuck in that situation. And we have clearly Theon still has something to do. We have that. So
I guess.
Are they? Like, Hound and Arya are able to get out of King's Landing because Theon and Arya are there, and they're able to, not Arya, Yara are there, and they're able to rescue them. Yeah. But then we have this other army that's coming, which to me just seems like it's more fodder for the army of the dead and nothing more.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh, and a note to bring back, something that I just felt. They know how far the army was from the wall.
Yeah.
They exactly know the distance because they just came in there, and they knew exactly what time. Why were they ill prepared for the army to be there?
No.
They should have known that this was coming. That should not have been a surprise. You were just there. You know exactly how far the distance is. You just walked it. You should have been prepared. You wouldn't have been prepared still with the huge dragon. You wouldn't have anything to do with that. But regardless, you should have at least been prepared for the giant army. We were just there.
I don't know. I just worry that we're going to be treated to more of like Jon shows up back in the north with Daenerys, and there's that whole scene of like all the Northmen being against it because he brought the Targaryens with him, and less time focused on the actual approaching army of the Dune. But
politics. I mean, my general view of this season was, I'm gonna again state it felt like part one of a 2-part series, and I'm curious to see what takes off.
The final season 7 and season 8 will tally to 13 episodes, so barely more than what a normal season of this show used to be.
Yeah.
So
halfway through.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it. So other than that, we're going to start watching more episodes.
Well, yeah, so how do we want to do that? Because you watched the show from season 7. So we have 60 episodes of the show you haven't seen. And it seems to me like if we watched an episode a week, we might actually finish just as the final season is starting to air.
Yeah. And then we won't have a bit anymore.
Do we go back to the start of this show and start from there, kind of taking this foreknowledge we have with us to the beginning, or do we work our way backwards in some way so that there's still a level of what you don't know?
I mean, that is the whole I've got nothing idea.
Well, pitch it to me, because I don't have that much of a stake in it because I've seen every episode of the show, so how I consume it on this rewatch doesn't affect me that much. What do you want?
Wife?
This is the wife. I've got a pitch.
Not my wife.
I think that the interesting part of this show, beyond you, Alex, knowing nothing, is him actually understanding things from certain context clues that he's gained from season 7. So I propose that you guys go back season by season. So next week we start at season 6, episode 1, go all the way through season 6. Week prior to that, season 5, all the way, and so on. And so then Alice watches the pilot. The end of season 1 as the final episode of the show so far.
And then that way we keep learning, and while there's still some ambiguity to it, it will feel very disjointed, but that's kind of the whole thing we're doing is disjointed and confused.
The only thing that you have to be careful of is the previously on.
Yeah.
For the first episode of each season.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'll close my eyes and scream really loudly for a short period of time.
So do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
So next week we watch season 6, episode 1.
What is it called? Who knows?
I'll tell you what it's called. Give me
all right.
1 minute.
So what we're going to be doing now is every episode it'll just start with season 6, episode 1, and we'll work all the way through. Next time, season 5, episode 1. And we're just going to kind of go through 60 episodes, 60 weeks, depending on whenever the series starts again, is when we'll then switch over to season 8. So
The Red Woman. Season 6, episode 1 is called The Red Woman.
We'll start with The Red Woman and see what the reactions are. And it will be cool because I think every season will act as less of a building block and more as a capsule, because I won't know what happened before. So I'd like that. So starting next week, we'll start season 6, episode 1. Right.
Cool. You have anything else?
I do not.
Okay, well then I guess this has been I Got Nothing.
Cheers, season
really,
1.
For the last episode that I haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
I guess stay strong, stay warm.
Don't get wet.
Winter's coming.
Watch Sister.